Hi, I'm Kathy Smith, the director of the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society here at Community College of Philadelphia. In today's Perspective interview, David Travaskis, Center board member and pro bono counsel to the PA Bar, speaks to Paul Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman is an assistant U.S. attorney whose work with young people in mock trial is known on the local, state, and national levels. I think you'll find this interview quite fascinating.
Hello. Welcome to the Perspective series of the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society. I'm David Travaskis, an adjunct professor here at the Paralegal Studies program at the Community College of Philadelphia. Today's guest is Paul Kaufman, the director of the local mock trial program. Paul, I'm so delighted to have you here.
It's great to be here on Perspectives, David.
And Paul, let's just start so you can tell our audience, what is high school mock trial?
Well, high school mock trial is a competition. That's the most important thing to know about it. It's like Science Olympiad or any of the other competitions that you've heard, but it's an academic competition. And the goal is to accomplish the most effective simulation of a trial, civil or criminal, depends on the year. And the goal of the students who are playing attorneys, is to seem as knowledgeable as a practicing attorney, as effective as a practicing attorney, as comfortable in the courtroom as a practicing attorney, and for the witnesses, it's to portray a particular character in a way that helps their team to score points, both in terms of the way that the case is running and on the judges' scoreboards.
Now, Philadelphia runs what's called the John S. Bradway Philadelphia High School Mock Trial Competition. And as I understand it, that's the oldest mock trial competition in Pennsylvania.
That's my understanding as well, yes. It's run in conjunction. It's a partnership between the Young Lawyers Division of the Philadelphia Bar Association and Temple Law School's LEAP program. And you called me the director. I'm happy to accept any promotions, but really I'm just an executive committee member with the YLD, the Young Lawyers Division side. And the mock trial coordinators are employees or contractors of Temple's LEAP program.
Now, this program is part of a statewide competition, but it's the local competition I think our audience would be interested in.
Superb.
And what kind of schools participate in it? Is it only public schools?
No, we have an incredible diversity of schools, from neighborhood public schools to charter and magnet schools to Catholic schools and schools of other faiths.
Wow. And then how many total teams participate in Philadelphia?
It varies year to year, depending on how many teams choose to register, how many teams want to be a part of things. We generally vary somewhere between the upper 20s and the low 40s.
Wow. And how many kids are on a team?
That varies also. The minimum number is 6, but in Philadelphia we have special rules to maximize participation. So you can have up to, if I remember the numbers correctly, it's 14 competing members for a team in any round of Philadelphia mock trial, plus a timekeeper. So those 30 teams represent certainly hundreds of Philadelphia high school students.
And can you just take us through what a year of the mock trial competition looks like?
Certainly. The year begins, usually many teams will begin practicing even before the state case is available. They'll get together, get to know each other, talk about the basics of trial practice that are true regardless of what we hand them. Then usually sometime in the first or second week of November, the state mock trial committee publishes a case. A case contains 6 witness statements at least, contains a number of exhibits, contains some pleadings, so the charges against a criminal defendant or the complaint against the civil defendant and the response to those charges, stipulations or agreements. Often we will create a fake judicial opinion that helps the students to understand what the issues that are left in the case are and walks them through any areas of law that are interesting and important for them to know, but for whatever reason that we want to write out of the problem. For example, there are in criminal cases, a criminal defendant typically has no obligation to testify, and frequently doesn't. And the Constitution protects your right to be free from any inference or comment by the prosecutor on that fact. The prosecutor can't get up, for example, in closing argument and say, hey, he didn't testify. If he was really innocent, he would have come up here and told you that. No, the Fifth Amendment prohibits that in a variety of contexts. Often our criminal defendants in mock trials testify because it's more entertaining and more fun. So does the prosecution get to comment on that fact before the testimony begins? In real court, that would be grounds for a mistrial and potentially for the dismissal of the entire criminal charge. But in mock trial, it would be unfair to do that. So we might have an agreement between the parties that the defendant is going to testify and that everybody is going to comment on that. It's the kind of thing that we would resolve at the beginning of the case or in the judicial opinion.
So now the kids on a team have gotten this problem sometime in November.
Right.
What do they do with it?
Well, in Philadelphia, one of the best things that we do is very shortly after the trial, after the case is presented to them, we have a camp at Temple Law School where any student who wants to come can learn about the problem, can get an opportunity to practice trial skills. It's usually the second or third Saturday in November. And we have 80, 90, 100 students from around Philadelphia and even occasionally the surrounding counties who will come in for the camp. After that, though, you've got to practice. You've got to start working with your teammates, working through the case, drafting those openings and closings, drafting your direct and cross-examinations, figuring out what your strategy is going to be. One of the things that we do is we give teams a lot more information than they could actually put in the time we give them. They're given a very short period of time in which to put on a case. That's intentional. That forces them to pick and choose the facts that they want, to figure out analytically what is really going to help my case versus what is extraneous. What do I like versus what do I love? And then they put together the package, and then once they've seen what facts they want to prove, then they can choose a theme, they can choose an idea, they can choose a way to present those facts that's going to be the most effective. Then, usually in January, we make available practice space at Temple's Law School for teams that want to practice there. They also have the opportunity to participate. Lots of local colleges and universities run preseason tournaments using our case in which the teams can practice going against one another. But then, sometime around the end of January, it's competition time. And we start running rounds of competition. Typically, we do one round each week, mostly on Friday nights. After school hours, we bring everyone to the Criminal Justice Center, or we usually do one Friday afternoon at the federal courthouse, which has also been kind enough to give us their space. And we thank both the federal courts and the CJC for giving us this wonderful space. And the students participate. They do the trials in the real courtrooms.
Now, is it one and done?
Never. Never. We don't believe in that for two main reasons. First off, it's a lousy education. And second off, the nature of mock trial is that teams have to do both sides. They have to be prepared to compete as the plaintiff or the defendant in the case. If you only gave them one side, a team might have a young member who they only put on the defense. If their plaintiff seemed lost, that person would never get the opportunity to be in trial. Also, from a constitutional administration, from a competition administration perspective, we do our very, very best to balance every case so that either side can win. But mistakes get made. And we don't want a situation where a team got knocked out of the competition because we made a mistake and one side is stronger than the other. So in Philadelphia, every team competes on both sides of the case before we knock out any team. And just arithmetically, the way that it works out, for the most part, for the teams that are in our primary draw of the competition, usually if you can win one of those rounds, the odds are very good that you'll move on. It's not a guarantee, but arithmetically, very often, if you can win either of your rounds, you will get an opportunity to compete in round 3.
Now, you mentioned your primary group. You have a training group each year that you do, right?
Yes. Yeah, we had a lot of conversations with our coaches. And one of the things that I absolutely love about being in Philadelphia is our coaches will not hesitate to tell us when we've done something wrong. But we solicit that input actively. And every year or two, we hold a meeting with all of our coaches to talk about the way that the competition is going. And 5 years ago or so, we were talking about ways to restructure and ways to streamline the competition to address some of the issues that they were having. And what we discovered was that one concern that a lot of coaches had was if you have a new team in the competition, a team that's less experienced at mock trial, possibly is coming from a less advantageous socioeconomic circumstance, and you happen to randomly draw in the first round last year's city champion, that was a lousy experience. It was a terrible experience for the students because they were just, it would be like taking the Philadelphia high school champion and putting them up against the Eagles, even in an Eagles down year. That's just the nature of the levels of competition there. And often those teams wouldn't even come back for the second round. They would be dispirited. That's terrible. We never want to see a team go home. We don't even want to see a team go home when we have to send them home. So when we don't have to, we certainly don't. And what we did to address that is we created a space, a separate competition draw for developmental teams, for newer teams or for older teams that rolled over and have a bunch of freshmen or a new attorney coach or are facing any kind of exceptional circumstance. And with the permission of the mock trial coordinator, they can go into the developmental tournament. Now, you're thinking to yourself, oh, that's just a JV. No, no, no. No, the developmental tournament feeds back into our standard draw for round 3. So the developmental teams compete against each other, and then their champion, often their runner-up, and sometimes their third runner-up, come back into the competition to compete in round 3 of the overall John S. Bradway pairing bracket. So a developmental team has just the same chances to win the city title, win the state as any other team. It's not a junior varsity competition by any stretch of the imagination. But what it is an educational space. Mm-hmm. And the judges for those rounds are told it's okay to help the students a little bit more. Our standard draw judges, you make an objection, you better know that objection. You better know how to respond to it if you're on the other team. You better know the response to that response if you're on the first team. You better know what hearsay is and what all of its exceptions are. Developmental judges are told if they need a little help with hearsay, walk them through it. Ask them some questions. Help them to understand. It's more of a learning experience for the first 2 rounds. But then they come back for round 3. And let me be clear. We've had teams advance out of round 3. We've had teams that were in developmental come into the main draw and beat teams that were in the main draw to start with. In fact, we changed the way we do our pairings to give them a better opportunity to do that because we saw in the initial years we were doing it how well they were doing.
That's really interesting. I love the idea of getting that participation. Eventually, you get to a city championship between the 2 remaining teams. How many times will they have done trials to get to the city championship?
5.
5 rounds?
5 rounds of our competition. How many times they've run that against themselves, how many times they've done that in a pre-tournament, how many times they've found a team in the next county over to scrimmage against. I suspect most of our best teams are on their 2 dozen run through, but 5 official rounds of competition.
And just to give our audience some sense of this, how do the Philadelphia teams do when they go to Harrisburg and compete against the champions from all over the state?
We are very, very competitive. We have certainly won the state title a number of times.
I know Overbrook High School has 3 state championships.
That's right.
And I think Masterman High School has a state championship
has one,
as well.
I believe, yes. But it's not just the state champions. We are always in contention for what we call the Final Four. The folks who make it to Saturday morning at the state competition. We bring 14 teams to state. 4 of them typically, sometimes 6 now, will compete on Saturday morning. And it is very common to have Philadelphia teams in that. We have routinely placed teams into the state finals. We're a highly competitive region.
I know Roman Catholic High School has 2 runners-up where they were second place.
That's correct.
In the state.
And Roman Catholic has been, Roman Catholic is in some ways a great example of a program because the current coach of Roman Catholic, the team that has been the runner-up twice now, was a student at Roman Catholic in the John S. Bradway competition when he was in high school. He learned from people. He came on. He decided to give back. Now he's the head coach of his team and is leading them to success that they didn't even experience when he was there. It's a great story.
Well, that is a great story. I wanted to talk for a minute about your personal story at mock trial. You're now a U.S. attorney. And
an assistant U.S. attorney. Please, Zane will be very displeased if he...
Well, and obviously you do this work with the support of the U.S. Attorney's Office because you put a lot of time into this.
Well, and not just me. My office is tremendously, tremendously supportive. We have a number of people, assistant U.S. attorneys and my coaches, and just for the audience, that's federal prosecutors for the most part, or people who defend the federal government in civil cases. we participate extensively. We have a number of AUSAs, Assistant U.S. Attorneys, who are coaches of teams, who are supported by the office. Our office provides a large number of judges for the Philadelphia competition every year, and in fact, just a couple years ago now, my office was honored with the Huey Burkett Service Award from the LEAP program at Temple for the commitment to the program.
Well, and I know that then Attorney General Holder had given a award to 3 members of your office, including you, Paul, for doing this kind of work in the community.
Yeah, it is the Attorney General's Heart So Big Community Service Award, and I received it along with Anthony St. Joseph, a former coach of Roman Catholic High School, and Tom Johnson, who is the coach of St. Joe's Prep.
Which is exciting stuff. But you yourself have a mock trial story, a high school mock trial story.
I do. An addiction, some might say.
But you got into this as a freshman in high school.
Yeah, changed my life.
So tell us about that a little bit.
Well, my folks would tell you that I came out of the womb arguing. So the idea of arguing for fun has never been particularly foreign to me. But I happened to be blessed to go to a wonderful school called St. Mark's High School in Wilmington, Delaware. And when I got to St. Mark's, they had this thing called mock trial. Now, my family is mostly doctors, although my uncle was an attorney. And I thought, well, I like the law. I like to argue. This sounds fun. And I went in, I joined the team, to say that it's defined the path of my life would probably be a little too far, but only a little. I learned there that I do love the law. I specifically learned that I love trial law. And I spent 4 years in high school, was fortunate enough, and understand Delaware is a smaller state, but fortunate enough to be a 4-time Delaware state champion, and fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how one counts this, to lose a national finals.
But it is exciting. It's actually, and our audience wouldn't know this, but I first met you when you were in high school.
Yes, indeed.
I met you at one of the competitions, and then Pennsylvania hosted a competition. I think, was that your senior year?
My senior year, in the wonderful competition in Pittsburgh.
And then you were involved in 2010 when Pennsylvania hosted the competition again, when we had the competition here in Philadelphia.
I was. When I was a kid, and this goes to show you just how lame I am. When I was a kid, I dreamed of writing a national problem, writing the national mock trial problem. I'd seen some great ones. I'd seen some ones I didn't like so much, and I said to myself, that's something I hope I someday get the chance to do. And I was very fortunate that I got to come back here to Philadelphia, and when Philadelphia was awarded the opportunity to host in 2010, I was blessed that the folks who were writing the case asked me to be a part of that, and I'm proud to say that I've been a part of it ever since. I've been writing the Pennsylvania state cases with the people with whom I wrote the national case ever since, and I've now the national case that we wrote for Philadelphia was successful enough that John Grode, a fabulous young Philadelphia attorney, and I were asked to write the 2012 national case, and we have since written 2 more national cases. In fact, my other dream when I was sitting in the competitions that we were at together in Atlanta and Chicago and Denver and then Pittsburgh, I saw all these national board people and I said, I'd love to do that someday. And I've been fortunate enough to have been elected to the national board, and I now serve as the case committee chairman for the national board. So it's my job to help make sure that the national case is what we need it to be every year.
Well, and this is the idea that really mock trial runs sort of seamlessly from our local John S. Bradway Philadelphia High School mock trial competition into the Pennsylvania Bar Association statewide mock trial competition into a national high school mock trial competition, and that works every year.
Absolutely. We are a partner at every level. Every state has regions and breakdowns, and every state, with a couple of exceptions, is a member of the national competition. And it is just such a pleasure for me to get to work at the national level and work on these big sort of programmatic issues that are going to come up once a year, and then to turn around and the next week be doing the scoring room for the Philadelphia competition. It is seamless. And the competition is set up in a large way to mirror each other so that everybody is running not on the same rules, but on rules that are somewhat consistent so that when you go further and further, you don't have to change your way of doing business entirely.
Well, and now, Paul, somebody looking at you and they say, oh, well, he went to a private school growing up, he's a lawyer today, all these things. Well, that mock trial must really be just for the elite. You have a young woman who's helping write your problems today, who's in Stanford. Do you want to tell her story a little bit?
I wouldn't. She'd kill me if I said I was telling her story, so I won't, but I'm going to brag on her. That's what we do. Talia Charmaine Zane is her name, and she was the captain of Central High School here in Philadelphia. Their team, she was the captain for a couple years. She was in the competition all 4 years. She is now well on her way at Stanford University to being an exceptional young lawyer. I know that in a couple of years she's going to be looking at law schools. She spent the summer, one of her summers, working for the Washington, D.C. Public Defender's Office, getting that experience. She's fabulous. I don't know her personal circumstance. I know that she's at Central. And it doesn't matter what your personal circumstances are. This competition is for everyone. You said it yourself. It's a private school competition that Overbrook has won 3 times. It doesn't make sense. We are happy to provide opportunities for everyone. And if I'm being honest, I'm happiest providing opportunities for people who don't get every opportunity. And I think that this competition is a wonderful way to tell people, generally, you know what the number one phobia in this country is? The number one fear? Public speaking. More than snakes, more than spiders, more than the dark, public speaking.
You wouldn't know that if you ever saw one of these competitions. If anyone watching this wanted to come to see a competition, are they open to the public? Could a public person come in and see the kids in operation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We would love anyone to come by. And let me just tell you, one of my coaches in high school was a guy named Joe Slights. Now, or recently, the Honorable Joe Slights of the Superior Court of Delaware. He only came to our first round of competition, or the state finals round of competition, because it was snowed out and his wife got picked up as a judge. And he had to be there to support his wife. And he heard it. He loved it. And he became one of the most successful mock trial coaches in Delaware history. He was a host director for the 2008 national competition in Wilmington. That's what we're talking about. Come once. We'll get you. We'll hook you. If you want to find out when our competitions are in Philadelphia, you can always contact Temple University's LEAP office, LEAP. Just do a Google search for Temple LEAP. If you want to find out where it is statewide or nationwide, the national mock trial website exists. The state mock trial website is run through the Pennsylvania Bar Associations. Just do a search, Pennsylvania Bar Association High School Mock Trial. It'll take you right to our page. Has contact information for everybody who's involved. We can give you the competition dates in any state or region.
So that's neat to know. I want to go back now to actually a competition itself. Take us to a mock trial. So it's the day that we've been preparing for. I come in with my team. We're going to be doing, let's say, the plaintiff's side. We're going against the defense. I have 3 lawyers. I have 3 witnesses. We have a judge. Is that a lawyer? Is that just a person off the street? Is that a real judge? Who's presiding at this trial?
Depends. We relatively rarely just pick people off the street and ask them to rule on hearsay exceptions. We tend to use lawyers. We have used paralegals if that's the best person. Anybody with substantial mock trial experience or trial experience can be a judge. Here in Philadelphia, we are blessed that we've developed a wonderful cadre of young lawyers and more senior lawyers who judge for us year in and year out. And so the chances are that the person sitting at the front of the room is somebody who's been sitting at the front of that room or a room like it for 3, 4, 5 years. Young lawyer, older lawyer, doesn't matter. And we, of course, have our fair share of people who are actually judges for a living who judge our competition as well.
And then you'll have a group of lawyers or paralegals or judges who will be actually scoring the people who are presenting.
That's right. I said it is a competition, and ultimately it is. You have to pick a winner. So it will always be an odd number. That's an important thing when you're designing a competition.
Yeah, you don't want it 3-3.
You don't really want 3-3. Kids aren't going to like that very much. So what you have is we will put either 3 or 5, depending on the round of competition, or if it's the city finals, we'll fill a jury box. with experienced attorneys, hopefully. Sometimes it's law students, but often there are law students with a great deal of mock trial experience. One of the nice things is, even though we're not involved with that competition, college mock trial has expanded radically in the time that the John S. Bradway competition has existed. So there are a great many young lawyers and law students who have spent 2, 3, 4 years competing in mock trials, some of them 8, high school and college. Those people are fabulous scoring judges. They know every trick in the book. So we try to put as many of them in there as we can. We try to balance our levels of experience so that if you're getting a less experienced judge, it's not a panel of entirely less experienced judges. And we let them score what they say. They score every trial segment on a 1 to 10. And then, after everything is done, they give you a team score, and they walk into the back room and they add.
One of the things that I like most about the competition is that the teams also, when they're done their competition, pick from the other side the best advocates, the best witnesses. They celebrate each other in really a wonderful sign of sportsmanship.
It's not done that way everywhere. It wasn't done that way when I was competing. In other states, very frequently, it's the judges who award you best witness or best attorney. And that can be a little rough. It can be rough for the other 5 attorneys, the other 5 witnesses. It can be rough for a team that lost to win one of those awards and wonder why. It can be rough for members of the other team that won, saying, well, we scored better. Why didn't we win it? Is that just a consolation prize? It's not. Look, I still have my gavels for the ones that I won. I'm very proud of it, and it feels really good to win. But it doesn't feel very good to lose. We choose to do things differently. Instead of awarding them that way, we have the opponent award its view of your best advocate and its view of your best witness, so that the round ends not with yet another person getting yet another prize, but with you acknowledging the quality done by the other team. We did that for the first time at Nationals. We did that here together, you and I, in 2010, and I'm proud to say that I've been to every National since then, and all but one of them, I think, have done it that way. The idea has spread nationwide to other states. It is one of the best moments of a trial because, let's face it, you're taking a bunch of type A kids, you're taking a bunch of kids who selected not only for an academic competition, but for an academic competition based on arguing and fighting. You're locking them in a room together for 2.5 hours, turning them on one another, and then you're asking them to think about what the other team did well. Then you're reminding them that this is not really about who wins or loses. It's really about the educational experience. It's really about civics. It's really about society. And that's an important lesson that I think you and I would like other attorneys to learn, much less high school students. But it is a wonderful, wonderful note on which to end a competition.
It's actually a wonderful note on which to end our conversation. Paul, it has been such a delight to have you here. I want to thank you for being our guest, and I want to thank everyone watching for tuning in. You have been watching the Perspective series of the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society. I'm David Trevaskis, an adjunct professor of paralegal studies here at the Community College of Philadelphia, and we will see you next time on CCP TV.